Kate Morrison stood straight as a board in the middle of the room. Her hands were behind her back and her eyes looked forward. The room was cold and white like a hospital. 3 alien beings sat at a long table in front of her. They were her judges today. The one in the middle was Commander Vex. He was a Korvaxi, which meant he looked like a giant lizard with sharp teeth. His skin was dark green and his eyes were yellow. He did not like humans. Kate knew this from the first day she came to the academy. To his left sat Dr. Quinn, an Altarian. She had blue skin and a big head with no hair. The Altarians were supposed to be very smart. They thought they knew everything about war because they read lots of books. On the right was Ambassador Fell, a Centaurian. He looked almost human, but his skin was pale gray and he had no nose. Just 2 small holes in his face. The Centaurians were good at talking to people and making deals. Behind Kate stood Captain Lisa Carter. She was the only human teacher at the academy. She had tried to help Kate many times, but today she could not do anything. Commander Vex picked up a tablet and started reading. Lieutenant Kate Morrison, you have been at this academy for 2 years. Your test scores are good. Your fighting skills are very good. But you do not follow orders. Kate wanted to speak, but she knew she had to wait. Last week you were given a war game to play. You were told to attack the enemy base using standard methods. Instead, you ignored your orders. You split your team into small groups. You attacked at night. You used tricks that are not taught here. Dr. Quinn spoke next. Her voice was soft but cold. Your methods worked, yes, but they were not proper. War must be fought with honor. There are rules. You cannot just do whatever you want. Kate remembered that night. She had taken her small team of human soldiers and done what felt right. While the other teams attacked the front of the enemy base like the book said, Kate had her people sneak around. They cut the power lines. They made noise in the wrong places to confuse the enemy. They won the game in half the time it should have taken. The alien students were angry. Their teachers were angry too. Kate had made them look bad. Ambassador Fell looked at Kate with his strange eyes. We understand that humans are different. You think fast. You change plans quickly. But this is not always good. In real war, other species need to know what you will do. They need to trust you. How can they trust someone who does not follow the plan? Kate could not stay quiet anymore. Sir, with respect, the plan was bad. If we had followed it, half my team would be dead right now. In real war, the enemy does not wait for you to do what the book says. They try to kill you any way they can. Commander Vex slammed his hand on the table. His claws made scratches in the metal. This is exactly the problem. You think you know better than thousands of years of military knowledge. You think your human ways are better than our ways. I think staying alive is better than following bad orders, Kate said. She knew she should stop talking, but the words came out anyway. Dr. Quinn shook her big head. You see? No discipline. No respect. Humans are too emotional. They cannot control themselves. Kate felt her face getting hot. She had worked so hard to get into this academy. She had studied for years. She had left her home planet and her family. She had learned 3 alien languages. She had followed most of the rules even when they made no sense. Captain Carter stepped forward. Commander, if I may, Lieutenant Morrison's results speak for themselves. Her methods may be different, but they work. Maybe we should think about adding some human tactics to our teaching. Commander Vex looked at Carter like she was a bug. Captain Carter, you are here because we need someone to teach basic combat to human students. That does not mean you understand real military strategy. Kate saw Captain Carter's face turn red. Carter had fought in real wars. She had saved thousands of lives. But these aliens treated her like she was nothing. Ambassador Fell tried to sound kind. Kate, we are not saying humans are bad soldiers. You are brave. You are strong. But this academy trains officers who will lead mixed species teams. Your way of fighting only works for humans. What about when you have Altarians on your team? Or Korvaxi? They cannot sneak around at night like humans can. Then I would make a different plan, Kate said. I would use what each species does best. Altarians are good at math and planning. Korvaxi are strong and tough. Humans are good at adapting. Why not use all of those things? Dr. Quinn made a noise like a laugh, but not happy. You want to change everything. You want us to throw away our methods and try your wild ideas. I want us to win, Kate said simply. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Kate could not read their faces, but she knew what was coming. Commander Vex stood up. He was very tall, much taller than Kate. Lieutenant Kate Morrison, you are dismissed from this academy. You will leave tomorrow morning. Your military career with the Coalition is over. Kate felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. She had expected this, but it still hurt. Yes, sir. Furthermore, Vex continued, you will not be allowed to apply to any other Coalition military program. Your file will show that you were removed for insubordination and inability to work with alien species. Captain Carter started to say something, but Vex held up his hand. The decision is final. Kate turned to leave. She had almost reached the door when Commander Vex spoke again. Morrison. She stopped and turned back. You think you are so smart. You think your human ways are the answer to everything. Let me tell you something. Out there in the real galaxy, your tricks will not work. You will fail. And when you do, you will remember this day. You will regret not learning discipline when you had the chance. Kate looked him right in his yellow eyes. She was not afraid anymore. She was angry, but she was also sure of herself. No, Commander, she said quietly. You'll regret this. Then she walked out of the room. Captain Carter followed her. In the hallway, Carter put her hand on Kate's shoulder. Kate, I'm sorry. I tried to help. I know, Kate said. It's not your fault. They made up their minds about me a long time ago. What will you do now? Kate looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was her future. It would not be easy, but she would make her own way. I don't know yet, she said, but I'll figure it out. I always do. That night, Kate packed her things. Tomorrow she would leave the academy forever. But she would not give up. Someday, she would prove that Commander Vex was wrong about humans. Someday she would show them all. 5 years had passed since Kate Morrison left the academy. The sting of that day still hurt sometimes, but Kate had learned to live with it. She was not the same person who had walked out of that cold white room. She was stronger now, and she knew things about fighting that no academy could teach. Kate lived on a planet called Haven Colony. It was far from Earth, far from the big cities where the important aliens lived. Haven was a farming world, where humans grew food and raised animals. Most people thought it was boring and safe. They were wrong about the safe part. Pirates attacked the outer colonies all the time. They came in fast ships, stole what they could, and disappeared. The Coalition military said they would protect the colonies, but their ships were always somewhere else when the pirates came. The colonists had to protect themselves. That was where Kate came in. She had started by helping one small town fight off raiders. The people there had old guns and no training. Kate taught them how to set traps, how to hide, and how to hit enemies when they did not expect it. The raiders came expecting easy targets. Instead, they found empty buildings that exploded when they walked inside. They found farmers who could shoot straight and disappeared into the fields like ghosts. Word spread fast. Other towns asked Kate to help them too. Soon she was traveling all over Haven Colony, teaching people how to fight. She did not use the methods from the academy. She used human methods, the ones that Commander Vex had called wild and undisciplined. Kate taught farmers to be soldiers, but not the kind of soldiers the aliens would recognize. These soldiers did not march in straight lines or wear fancy uniforms. They knew every hill and tree on their land. They could make bombs from farming chemicals. They could talk to each other using signals that looked like normal farm work. The pirates learned to fear Haven Colony. 3 different raider groups tried to take the main settlement. All 3 were destroyed. The survivors spread stories about farmers who fought like demons and disappeared like smoke. But Kate's success made some people angry. Not the colonists, they loved her. The anger came from the Coalition military, the same people who had thrown her out of the academy. Dr. Alan Wright was a human scientist who worked at the academy. He had been there when Kate was dismissed, and he had never forgotten her. Alan was not a fighter, but he was very smart, and he knew how to find information. Alan spent his free time reading reports about the Coalition military. What he found worried him. Graduates from the academy were failing in real battles. They followed their training perfectly, but they kept losing to enemies who did not fight by the rules. In the past year, 3 different Coalition fleets had been defeated by smaller enemy forces. Each time, the enemy had used tricks and tactics that the Coalition officers did not expect. The academy-trained officers did everything right according to their books, but they lost anyway. Alan brought his findings to Captain Lisa Carter. She was still at the academy, still the only human teacher, still trying to change minds one student at a time. "Lisa, look at this," Alan said. They were sitting in Carter's small office, drinking coffee and looking at reports on Alan's computer. The Helix fleet lost 6 ships to pirates last month. The pirates had fewer ships and older weapons, but they won. Carter read the report. They used hit-and-run tactics, drew the fleet into an asteroid field and picked them off one by one. Exactly. And here, Alan pulled up another report. The border patrol near Vega system. They lost an entire station to raiders. Same story, Carter said. The raiders did not attack the station directly. They took out the supply ships first, then waited for the station to run out of food and power. Alan nodded. Every defeat has the same pattern. Our people expect a fair fight. They expect the enemy to behave like academy cadets. But real enemies do not fight fair. Carter leaned back in her chair. I know someone who could teach them how to fight real enemies. Kate Morrison. She's been out there for 5 years teaching colonists how to survive. Have you seen the reports from Haven Colony? Pirate attacks have dropped by 90%. They're afraid to go there now. Alan was quiet for a moment. The Academy would never take her back. Too much pride. Things are changing, Carter said. Commander Vex is being moved to a different job. The Coalition Council is asking hard questions about why our graduates keep losing. They want answers. And you think they'd listen to Kate? I think they're desperate enough to listen to anyone who can win. Carter sent a message to Kate that night. The message was short and careful, because military communications were watched by many people. Kate, there might be an opportunity coming soon. Would you be interested in teaching again? Different situation this time. Lisa. Kate read the message 3 times. She was sitting on the porch of her small house watching the sunset over the fields. Haven Colony was beautiful in its own way. The people here were good people. They had given her a home when no one else would, but Kate knew that the problems were bigger than just one colony. Every week she heard stories from other worlds. Pirates were getting bolder. Some of them had military training now, like they were being taught by someone who knew coalition tactics. The outer colonies were suffering, and the coalition military could not stop it. Kate was thinking about how to answer Carter's message when the attack came. The pirates hit Haven Colony's main town just after midnight. But these were not ordinary pirates. They moved like soldiers with discipline and planning. They knew exactly where to hit the power station, the communications center, and the spaceport. Kate grabbed her weapons and ran toward town. By the time she got there, buildings were burning and people were screaming. She found Mayor Jack Peters hiding behind an overturned truck with his family. Kate, thank God you're here. We can't reach any of our defense teams. They cut all our communications. Kate looked at the burning town. These raiders knew too much. They had studied Haven's defenses and found ways around them. Someone had taught them how to fight like coalition soldiers. Jack, get your family to the emergency shelter. Tell everyone you see to do the same. I'm going after the raiders. Kate, there are too many of them. You can't fight them all. Kate checked her rifle. I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to make them fight each other. What happened next became a legend on Haven Colony. Kate moved through the burning town like a shadow. She did not try to fight all the raiders at once. Instead, she played tricks on them. She used their radios to send false orders. She set fires that made them think they were being attacked from different directions. She made noise in empty buildings while sneaking up on them from behind. By dawn, the raider force was scattered and confused. Half of them had retreated to their ships. The other half were shooting at each other because Kate had convinced them that some of their own people were enemies. When the sun came up, 23 raiders were dead or captured. The rest had run away. Kate had not lost a single person from the town, but the victory came with a cost. During the fighting, Kate found evidence that made her blood run cold. The raiders had coalition military equipment. Their leader had academy training. Someone was teaching pirates how to use coalition tactics against coalition colonies. That night, Kate sent her answer to Carter's message. Lisa, yes, I'm interested. It's time to come home. Kate. 3 days later, a coalition transport ship landed on Haven Colony. Kate said goodbye to the people who had become her family. They did not want her to go, but they understood. The problem was bigger than just their world now. As the ship lifted off, Kate looked down at Haven Colony one last time. She had learned important things there. She had learned that her methods worked not just in war games, but in real life. She had learned that ordinary people could become extraordinary fighters when they had something to protect. Most importantly, She had learned that the galaxy needed teachers who understood how real wars were fought. The academy methods were failing and people were dying because of it. Kate was going back to the place that had rejected her. But this time things would be different. This time she would not be a student asking for acceptance. She would be a teacher with something important to offer. The question was whether they would be smart enough to listen. Kate Morrison walked through the halls of Zephyr Academy for the first time in 5 years. Everything looked the same, but she was different. She wore a simple black uniform with no decorations, and she carried a bag with her teaching materials. Students and teachers stopped to stare at her as she passed. The whispers followed her everywhere. That's the human who was kicked out. I heard she's going to be a teacher now. How can they let her back in after what happened? Kate did not care about the whispers. She had a job to do. Commander Zara stood waiting in the main office. She was an Altarian like Dr. Quinn, but younger and with kinder eyes. She had been promoted to Academy Director after Commander Vex was transferred to a desk job on some distant planet. Lieutenant Morrison, Zara said, extending her hand. Welcome back to Zephyr Academy. I hope this experience will be better than your last one. Kate shook her hand. Thank you, Commander. I'm ready to get started. Good. I should warn you, not everyone is happy about this decision. Many faculty members think hiring human instructors is a mistake. You will need to prove yourself quickly. I understand. Zara led Kate to a small classroom in the basement of the academy. It was not the best location, but Kate did not complain. She had taught people to fight in burned-out buildings and muddy fields. A basement classroom was luxury compared to that. Your first class consists of cadets who are struggling with traditional methods, Zara explained. Some are here because they failed other classes. Others are here because they ask too many questions. We thought they might benefit from a different approach. Kate looked at the list of names. There were 12 students, 6 humans, 3 Corvaxi, 2 Altarians, and 1 Centaurian. Most of them had low grades and bad reports from other teachers. These are the students no one else wants, Kate said. Exactly. If you can help them, it will prove that your methods have value. If you cannot. Zara did not finish the sentence, but Kate understood. The next morning, Kate met her first class. The students filed in looking tired and unhappy. They had been told this was a punishment class, a place for failures and troublemakers. Ryan Blake was the first human student Kate noticed. He was young, maybe 19, with short brown hair and nervous eyes. His file said he came from a military family on Earth, but he had no confidence. The other students seemed to ignore him. Zix Corvaxi sat in the back corner with his arms crossed. He was Commander Vex's nephew, and he looked just like his uncle. Green skin, yellow eyes, sharp teeth. Kate could see the anger in his face. He did not want to be here, and he definitely did not want to learn from a human. Neela Centaurian sat in the front row, taking notes before class even started. Her file said she was supposed to be a diplomat, not a soldier, but the coalition required all species to have military training. She looked like she would rather be anywhere else. Alex Martinez was older than the other students. He had grown up on a colony world and his hands were rough from hard work. He watched Kate with careful eyes, like he was trying to decide if she could be trusted. The other students were a mix of personalities and problems. Some were too aggressive, others too timid. Some were very smart but could not work with others. Some tried hard but never seemed to understand what their teachers wanted. Kate stood at the front of the class and looked at each student for a moment. Then she spoke. My name is Kate Morrison. 5 years ago, I was thrown out of this academy for the same reason most of you are in this class. I did not fit the mold. I questioned orders. I tried new things. I refused to do things that made no sense just because someone told me to. The students looked surprised. Teachers usually did not admit to being failures. Since then, I have been fighting real wars against real enemies. I have won battles that everyone said were impossible to win. I have taught farmers to defeat professional soldiers. I have learned things about combat that are not in any textbook. Zix raised his hand. If you're so great at fighting, why are you here teaching failures like us? Kate smiled. Because failures like you are the future of the coalition military. The old ways are not working anymore. Graduates who follow every rule perfectly are losing battles to enemies who break all the rules. We need soldiers who can think, adapt, and survive when everything goes wrong. She walked to the front of the room and activated a holographic display. It showed a space battle from the previous year, one where a coalition fleet had been destroyed by pirates. Who can tell me what went wrong here? Neela raised her hand. The coalition fleet followed standard formation doctrine. They should have won easily. Should have, yes. But they lost. Why? The students studied the display. Ryan spoke up quietly. The pirates did not fight fair. They hid in the asteroid field and picked off ships one at a time. Exactly. The coalition commanders expected a fair fight. They expected the pirates to line up their ships and have a proper battle. But real enemies do not fight fair. They use every advantage they can find. Alex leaned forward. So what should the fleet have done? Good question. Let's find out. Kate reset the simulation and put the students in charge of different ships. Your job is to defeat the pirates using any method that works. There are no rules except this: keep your people alive and complete the mission. What happened next was chaos. The students tried to use standard tactics at first, and they failed just like the real fleet had. But Kate did not let them give up. She made them try again and again, each time asking them to think of new solutions. Slowly, the students began to change their approach. Ryan suggested splitting the fleet into smaller groups. 6 proposed using the asteroids as cover instead of avoiding them. Neela recommended sending fake surrender messages to confuse the pirates. Alex wanted to use the fleet's transport ships as decoys. None of these ideas were in the textbooks. All of them worked. By the end of the class, the students had found 6 different ways to defeat the pirates. Each method used tricks, deception, and unconventional tactics. Each method would have been marked wrong on a traditional academy test. This is what real war looks like, Kate told them. Messy, unfair, and unpredictable. The side that adapts fastest usually wins. The side that sticks to the plan usually dies. After the students left, Kate sat alone in the empty classroom. Through the walls, she could hear other classes in session. Teachers were lecturing about honor and discipline and following proper procedures. Students were memorizing rules that would get them killed in a real fight. Kate knew she had a long way to go. One good class did not prove anything. She needed to show lasting results, and she needed to do it before the Academy's traditionalists found a way to get rid of her. But something had happened in that classroom. She had seen it in the students' eyes. For the first time in their Academy careers, they had tasted success. They had solved problems using their own minds instead of just following orders. They had discovered that being different might actually be an advantage. That evening, Kate received a message on her computer. It was from Captain Carter. Heard your first day went well. Keep it up. The old guard is already planning ways to discredit you. Be careful, Lisa. Kate deleted the message and went back to preparing lessons for tomorrow. She knew there would be resistance. Some teachers and students would never accept human methods. Some would try to sabotage her efforts, but Kate had learned patience during her years in exile. She had learned how to win long campaigns, not just quick battles. The Academy had rejected her once because she was too different. Now that difference was exactly what they needed. She just had to survive long enough to prove it. Outside her window, Kate could see new transport ships arriving with fresh students. Young beings from across the galaxy, coming to learn how to be soldiers and officers. Most of them would be taught to fight the old way, the safe way, the way that got people killed when it really mattered. But some of them would find their way to Kate's classroom. And those students would learn something different. They would learn how to think, how to adapt, and how to win when the odds were against them. They would learn how to fight like humans. 3 months had passed since Kate Morrison started teaching at Zephyr Academy. Her small classroom in the basement had become the most talked about place in the entire school. Students who had been written off as failures were suddenly showing remarkable improvement. Ryan Blake was no longer the nervous young man who had entered Kate's class. He stood straighter now, spoke with confidence, and had begun leading study groups for other struggling students. His tactical scores had improved from failing to the top 10% of his year. Zix Korvaxi had been the biggest surprise. The angry Korvaxi who had challenged Kate on the first day had become one of her most dedicated students. He still had his uncle's fierce pride, but now he used it to push himself and his teammates to be better. He had learned that honor and victory were not opposite things. Alex Martinez had found his calling in guerrilla warfare tactics. His colony background gave him insights that city-raised students could not match. He understood how to use terrain, weather, and local resources as weapons. Kate often used him as an assistant instructor. Neela Centaurian had discovered that diplomacy and warfare were closely related. She learned to use words as weapons, to confuse enemies with false information and to turn enemy groups against each other. Her skills in psychological warfare were becoming legendary among the students. The other students in Kate's class had all improved as well. They worked together now, combining their different species' strengths instead of competing with each other. They had learned to think like a team, not just individuals. But success brought new problems. Other teachers were complaining that Kate's students were disruptive in their traditional classes. They questioned standard procedures. They suggested alternative tactics. They refused to simply memorize rules without understanding why those rules existed. Professor Grimm was one of the most vocal critics. He was an old Altarian who had been teaching at the academy for 40 years. He believed in discipline above all else. Morrison's students are becoming uncontrollable, he complained to Commander Zara. They argue with everything I say. They think they know better than their instructors. Commander Zara looked tired. She had been dealing with complaints like this every day. Are their grades improving? That is not the point. Grades do not matter if students cannot follow orders. Actually, Professor, I think following orders without understanding them is exactly the problem our graduates are having in real combat situations. Professor Grimm was not convinced, but he was not the only one with concerns. A group of traditionalist teachers had begun meeting privately to discuss the human problem. They wanted Kate removed from the academy before her influence spread further. Kate knew about the opposition. Her students told her everything they heard. She also knew that her time was running out. She needed to prove her methods worked in a big public way. She needed a victory that no one could argue with. The opportunity came in the form of the Academy's annual war games. Every year, the different classes competed in massive military simulations. It was the most important event of the Academy year. Families came from across the galaxy to watch. Military leaders used the war games to identify promising young officers. Traditionally, the senior students dominated the war games. They had more training, more experience, and better equipment. The junior students, especially those in remedial classes, were usually eliminated quickly. This year would be different. Commander Zara announced that Kate's class would be allowed to participate as a demonstration of their progress. They would compete against regular academy teams in the preliminary rounds. No one expected them to win, but it would show whether Kate's teaching methods had any real value. Kate gathered her 12 students in their basement classroom to prepare. On the wall, she had hung a map of the wargame arena, a simulated star system with multiple planets, asteroid fields, and space stations. We're going to be outnumbered, Kate told them. The other teams have more ships, better weapons, and more experienced crew members. Everyone expects us to lose quickly. Zix grinned, showing his sharp teeth. Sounds like our kind of fight, exactly. What advantages do we have? Ryan spoke up first. They'll underestimate us. They think we're just the failure class. Good, what else? Neela added. They'll expect us to use standard tactics. When we do something unexpected, it will confuse them. Alex nodded. And we know how to work with limited resources. Most of these rich academy kids have never had to make do with less than perfect equipment. Kate smiled. Her students understood. They had learned the most important lesson of all, how to turn disadvantages into advantages. The war games began on a Monday morning. 12 different teams representing various classes and years took positions throughout the simulated star system. Each team controlled a small fleet of ships and had specific objectives to complete. Kate's team was assigned the most difficult mission. They had to capture and hold a heavily fortified space station while being attacked by enemy fleets. According to computer projections, they had a 5% chance of success. The first day went badly for almost everyone except Kate's students. Traditional teams followed standard procedures and found themselves outmaneuvered by the computer-controlled enemy forces. Several teams were eliminated before lunch, but Kate's students were thriving. Instead of attacking the space station directly, they had scattered their ships throughout the system. Ryan's group was conducting hit-and-run attacks on enemy supply lines. Zix was leading a diversionary assault on a decoy target. Neela had infiltrated the enemy communications network and was feeding false information to their commanders. Alex had done something that shocked the observing instructors. He had landed his ship on a small moon and was using its mining equipment to build improvised weapons. No one had ever thought to use industrial tools as military hardware. By the second day, other teams were copying Kate's students' tactics. They saw how effective the unconventional methods were and tried to adapt. But they had not been trained in flexible thinking the way Kate's students had. Their attempts at deception and guerrilla warfare were clumsy and obvious. The breakthrough came on the third day. Kate's students had been slowly surrounding the target space station while making it look like they were retreating. The enemy forces, confident in their victory, had relaxed their defenses. That was when Kate's students struck with everything they had learned. Ryan's team emerged from hiding and disabled the station's defense systems using a computer virus that Neela had helped design. Zix led a boarding party that captured the station's command center through maintenance tunnels that normal academy training said were too dangerous to use. Alex used his improvised weapons to destroy the enemy fleet's flagship. In less than 6 hours, Kate's 12 students had accomplished what military analysts said was impossible. They had captured the most heavily defended target in the wargame arena using inferior equipment and smaller numbers. The victory was complete and undeniable. In the observation room, military leaders and academy instructors watched in stunned silence. The simulation replayed the final assault 3 times, and each viewing made it clear that this was not luck. It was the result of superior training and innovative thinking. Commander Zara stood before the assembled faculty that evening. Professor Grimm and his traditionalist allies had demanded an emergency meeting to discuss the war games results. The results speak for themselves, Zara said. Lieutenant Morrison's students achieved total victory using methods that none of our regular programs teach. They demonstrated flexibility, creativity, and tactical brilliance. Professor Grimm was red with anger. They cheated. They used methods that violate basic military principles. They used methods that work, Zara replied calmly. Isn't that what we're supposed to be teaching? But what about discipline? What about following orders? Captain Carter, who had been watching from the back of the room, stepped forward. Professor, with respect, following bad orders gets people killed. These students learned to think for themselves while still working as a team. That's the most important skill any officer can have. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The war games had been watched by coalition military leaders from across the galaxy. They had seen Kate's students accomplish the impossible, and they wanted to know how. Within a week, Kate received orders to expand her program. She would be allowed to train instructors who could teach her methods at other academies. Her basement classroom would be replaced with a proper facility. Most importantly, her tactical innovations would be integrated into the standard curriculum. That night, Kate sat in her quarters writing a report on the war games. Through her window, she could see students from all over the academy gathering to discuss what they had witnessed. Many of them were asking their regular instructors why they had never been taught the methods that Kate's students used. Change was coming to Zephyr Academy. It would not be easy, and there would still be resistance from traditionalists, but Kate had proven that human methods could work for any species willing to learn them. Her students had shown the galaxy something important, that the willingness to adapt, to question rules, and to try new approaches was not a weakness to be corrected, it was a strength to be cultivated. 6 months had passed since the war games, and Zephyr Academy looked very different now. Kate Morrison's basement classroom had been replaced with a full training facility. The Morrison method was being taught alongside traditional tactics. Students from across the galaxy were requesting transfers just to study, under the human instructor who had changed everything, but not everyone was happy with the changes. Commander Vex had returned to the academy as a special advisor. Officially, he was there to help integrate new teaching methods. Unofficially, everyone knew he was there to find a way to discredit Kate and return the academy to its old ways. Vex had been planning for months. The final examination was coming, the most important test of the academy year. It was a massive simulation that would pit graduating students against complex military scenarios. Families, military leaders, and government officials from across the coalition would be watching. Vex had used his influence to design this year's examination personally. He had created a scenario that would make Kate's students look like failures in front of the most important people in the galaxy. Kate knew something was wrong when she saw the mission briefing. Her mixed group of human and alien students had been assigned to defend a colony world called New Terra, against a massive invasion force. The attacking fleet was 3 times larger than anything the defenders could field. The colony had no military bases, no orbital defenses, and no way to evacuate civilians. According to every military computer model, the mission was impossible. The defenders would be overwhelmed within hours. It was designed to show that unconventional tactics were useless against overwhelming force. Kate gathered her students in the briefing room. Ryan Blake, now a senior cadet and team leader, studied the mission parameters with worried eyes. Zix Korvaxi growled softly as he read the enemy force composition. Neela Centaurian was already calculating impossible odds on her tablet. Alex Martinez just shook his head. "This is a setup," Alex said bluntly. "They want us to fail in front of everyone." "Of course it's a setup," Kate replied calmly. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Ryan looked up from his tablet. "The computer says we have a 0% chance of victory using standard tactics." "Good thing we don't use standard tactics," Zix said. His yellow eyes were bright with anticipation. "What's the real objective here?" Kate smiled. Her students had learned to ask the right questions. "The stated objective is to defend New Terra from invasion. But what do you think our real objective is?" Neela understood first. "To prove that human methods work even in impossible situations." "Exactly. So let's think about this differently. We can't win by destroying the enemy fleet. They're too strong. We can't win by holding territory. We don't have enough troops. What can we do?" The students spent the next hour brainstorming ideas. Some were wild, some were brilliant, and some were completely insane. Kate encouraged all of them. In her experience, the craziest ideas often contained the seeds of victory. The examination began 3 days later. The Academy's main auditorium was packed with observers. Coalition military leaders sat in the front rows taking notes. Behind them were families of graduating students, Academy faculty, and government representatives. In the control room, Commander Vex watched the simulation displays with satisfaction. His trap was perfect. Kate's students were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had been programmed to counter every unconventional tactic he could think of. The invasion began at dawn, simulated time. Massive enemy fleets emerged from hyperspace around New Terra. Thousands of invasion ships headed for the planet's surface while battleships moved to destroy the small defensive force that Kate's students commanded. For the first few hours, everything went according to Vex's plan. The enemy fleet brushed aside the orbital defenses easily. Landing craft began depositing troops on New Terra's surface. Traditional military doctrine said the planet would fall within a day, but Kate's students were not following traditional military doctrine. Instead of fighting the invasion fleet directly, they had scattered their ships throughout the star system. Ryan's team was conducting lightning raids on enemy supply ships, destroying fuel and ammunition before disappearing into asteroid fields. Zix had taken his Korvaxi warriors to the planet's surface, but instead of defending cities, they were attacking landing zones and supply depots. Neela was working her magic with communications warfare. She had infiltrated the enemy command network and was spreading false reports about the colony's defenses. Enemy commanders were receiving contradictory orders, conflicting intelligence, and fake casualty reports that made them overly cautious. Alex had done something that made the observers gasp. He had evacuated the entire civilian population into the planet's extensive cave systems and abandoned the surface cities completely. When enemy troops landed, they found empty buildings and silent streets. But Kate's students were just getting started. On the second day of the simulation, strange things began happening to the invasion force. Supply convoys would vanish mysteriously. Communications would be jammed at critical moments. Enemy units would find themselves attacking positions that had been abandoned hours earlier, walking into carefully prepared ambushes. The civilian population that was supposed to be helpless prey had become an intelligence network. Farmers reported enemy movements. Miners provided explosives for improvised weapons. Children ran messages between resistance cells using routes that enemy forces couldn't track. By the third day, the massive invasion force was struggling with problems they had never encountered in traditional war games. Their superior firepower meant nothing if they couldn't find targets. Their advanced technology was useless against enemies who fought with farm tools and mining equipment. Their disciplined formations were being picked apart by invisible opponents who struck and vanished like ghosts. Commander Vex watched his perfect simulation falling apart. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. Where were the grand battles, the heroic charges, the clear victories and defeats? Instead, his overwhelming invasion force was being slowly bled to death by an enemy they couldn't even see. "Sir," one of his assistants said nervously, "the invasion commanders are requesting additional reinforcements. They say the resistance is much stronger than anticipated." Vex stared at the tactical display. According to his computers, Kate's students had lost most of their original military forces. The planet should have surrendered days ago, but somehow the resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. That was when he realized what was happening. Kate's students had not tried to win a traditional military victory. They had turned the entire planet into a weapon. Every civilian was now a potential spy or saboteur. Every farm was a potential source of explosive materials. Every cave was a potential hiding place for weapons. Every mountain was a potential ambush site. The invasion force was not conquering a planet. They were drowning in it. On the fourth day, cracks began to show in the enemy fleet. Unit commanders were requesting permission to withdraw. Morale reports showed increasing fear and confusion among invasion troops. Supply officers were reporting critical shortages of fuel, ammunition, and food. Kate's students had achieved something that military theorists said was impossible. They had made the enemy's strength into a weakness. The larger the invasion force, the more supplies it needed. The more supplies it needed, the more targets Kate's students had to attack. The invasion was consuming itself. The end came on the fifth day. Enemy fleet commanders, facing constant harassment and dwindling supplies, began fighting among themselves over resources. Some units tried to retreat while others wanted to continue the assault. The unified invasion force broke apart into competing factions. Kate's students, who had been waiting for exactly this moment, emerged from hiding and struck at the divided enemy forces. Ryan's raiders destroyed fleeing ships. Zix's ground forces captured abandoned equipment. Neela turned enemy units against each other with false communications. Alex's civilian network provided intelligence that allowed precise strikes against enemy weak points. When the simulation ended, the massive invasion force had been completely destroyed. Not through superior firepower or numbers, but through patience, cunning, and the refusal to fight on the enemy's terms. The auditorium was silent for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Soon the entire audience was on their feet, applauding not just Kate's students, but the impossible victory they had achieved. Commander Vex sat in his chair, staring at the final casualty reports. His unbeatable invasion force had suffered 93% casualties. Kate's students had lost less than 10% of their original forces and had gained control of vast amounts of captured enemy equipment. Admiral Kane, the coalition's highest-ranking military officer, stood up slowly. He was an old Korvaxi warrior who had fought in dozens of real battles. His voice carried across the auditorium. "In 40 years of military service, I have never seen anything like this. These students faced impossible odds and achieved total victory through superior tactics, innovative thinking, and unbreakable determination. This is exactly the kind of leadership our military needs." He turned to look directly at Kate. "Lieutenant Morrison, I hereby promote."